You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast. Starting off, as I always do, by directing your attention to wealthformula.com. That is the home of this podcast on the internet. And that is where you've got all sorts of opportunities to further your involvement into the Wealth Formula community. There's lots of free stuff, free books, lots of ways to get involved on the various lists. Of course, you can join Investor Club there if you are an accredited investor and you want to stop just listening to these things and actually participating, getting off the sidelines and making something happen. Speaking of getting off the sidelines and making something happen, I want to point out that the Wealth Formula Meetup, the next one, is coming up April 24th and 25th. This is going to be just as good as the others. It is going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, and it will feature a number of very well-known people, some from before, some new ones, including we have Tom Wheelwright back, of course, to talk about taxes. We have Doug Lodmell, but we also have Kenny McElroy, who many of you know as the Rich Dad Advisor to Real Estate for Robert Kiyosaki. Dave Steele, of course. We've also got Richard Wilson coming. Richard, if you don't know who he is the guy who started something called Family Office Club, and he has a lot of knowledge when it comes to really wealthy people. I think he has 3 or 4 billionaire mandates in his group. So that will be fantastic. You're going to learn about oil and gas. I'm even going to do a little talk about something a little bit different, just to keep things fresh. It's going to be about happiness. Now, if you want to sign up for that, you're going to need to move quick. Go to wealthformulaevents.com. Again, that's wealthformulaevents.com. We are capping once again at 100 people, and it's going to fill up quickly. So if you've been to one of these events, I will tell you that the most exciting element of these things is the ability to meet one another, because Wealth Formula and Wealth Formula Nation, our community, is the best podcast community in the world. There's lots of podcast communities out there, and ours is unique in that, listen, it's not, it's the best podcast community in the world for people like us, right? People who are not trying to escape the cubicle. People who are not, just trying to figure out how to make their first few bucks. This is a very, very accomplished group of individuals who comes to this group. It's not that everybody's super sophisticated when it comes to investing, but we have a lot of smart people, a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists and lawyers and business people. And, a lot of friendships are made. We, have a good time. We learn a lot, and we have lots of cocktails. It is super fun. Can't wait to see you there, April 24th and 25th in Phoenix. Again, that is wealthformulaevents.com. Now, as for today's show, this is, I think, apropos of the time. You see, with the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. Now, I have to tell you that I don't like basketball. I don't like it at all, even though I'm a tall guy and everybody tried to get me to play basketball as a kid. I rejected it. And when I went out there, I wasn't very good either, because when you don't like something, you're not very good at it. I was an ice hockey player in Minnesota. But what I will say is that despite the fact that I don't like basketball, I knew very well who Kobe Bryant was. It was sort of like, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, right? Those are the names you just know, right? Everybody knows them. And therefore was, just as shocked as most people about the news, with the tragic accident that took his and his daughter's life. And, the thing about it is that it actually reminded me, you may find this odd that I would say this, but it reminded me very much of my reaction back in 1997. It was my medical school orientation week, and we were at we were partying, and we were at some bar, and there's TVs at the bar, and all of a sudden they flashed up that Princess Diana had died in a car crash. And I remember that I was really upset by it. I was really upset and disturbed. Now, I'm not like a big follower of the royal family. I could care less. But I knew who Princess Diana was. I remember as a little kid watching the wedding on TV with my mom, right? And so it was pretty powerful. But I'm sitting there with a friend of mine from med school. Actually, it was a guy I went to high school with who was also at Northwestern at the time and doing orthopedic surgery. And he says to me, "So what? People die all the time, right?" So my initial response to him was, basically, "You're a jerk. You're a real heartless jerk. I mean, this is awful." However, I have to say that when I look back at that situation, I look at the situation with Kobe, it does beg the question, right, of why someone who could really not care less about basketball like me or the British royal family could get so disturbed when unexpected tragedies like this happen to, people who have really no connection with, right? They don't know them. They don't really pay attention to them. They just know who they are. Why is that? Well, I think the reason is that, high-profile tragedies affect, I think the reason they affect us the way they do is because they somehow strip the world of its makeup, all the cosmetics. In order not to go crazy, most of us have to create a reality in which things happen for a reason. And, thinking of life as cruel and disorderly and downright dangerous does not really help with a sense of well-being. And that's what we all want to have, right? So what do? We slap on some lipstick onto reality and pretend that we are masters of our universe and that we are in total control. Now, Kobe Bryant's death puts that sense of order in doubt. He was, a super successful guy, beloved athlete. People who didn't even like basketball knew who he was. He had 4 kids. He was strong. He was smart. And he seemed like he was just getting started, right? If someone like that can die suddenly, then that puts that sense of order completely out of whack. It makes no sense. But change and loss are inevitable, and they're inevitable for everyone, rich, poor, powerful, weak, you name it. The question is, how do you get through it? Now, I certainly don't know the answer to that, but my guest on Wealth Formula podcast today, Russell Gray, is doing his best to help himself and others to do just that because of some recent tragedies in his own life. Russ is a really good friend. He's a wise man, and he will be with us right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest on Wealth Formula podcast is one half of the dynamic duo that makes up the Real Estate Guys radio show, the number one real estate podcast in the world. Now, Russ has been a friend of mine for several years, and I got to tell you, I really enjoy talking to him. He's a guy who's seen a lot, success, failure, happiness and sorrow, and he's never afraid to talk about any of this. And in that respect, he offers a significant opportunity for people to learn from. He's a guy with a lot of wisdom. In fact, for this reason, and for many reasons, I had invited him to our next meetup, which we had called Hindsight 2020, in part because we were going to be reflective on this. But unfortunately, he had a prior commitment. So the next best thing was to have him on the podcast. So Russ, my friend, welcome back to Wealth Formula Podcast.
Thanks, Buck. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I want to say congratulations to you for your success and the difference you're making in the world right now. I know you're changing a lot of lives and sharing the things that you've learned. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate that. Russ, a lot of people already know you from the Real Estate Guys radio show, but give us a little history on yourself before you did that, and then maybe we can kind of transition into, sort of the topic for today, which is, being reflective and trying to understand how to learn from, these problems in your life and things like that.
Yeah. So I'll answer the question kind of in the context of the topic, and get kind of the highlights or really kind of the lowlights of my life and my career. I met a pretty little blonde when I was 16 years old that I wrote in her yearbook, her junior year, that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I ended up proposing to her at 17 years old and marrying her at 18 years old, and trudged off into life. I was too impatient to go to college and ended up in corporate America at the very, very bottom of the corporate food chain, and quickly realized that I had no future there and I needed a way out and I needed a mentor. Fortunately, my uncle was an experienced salesman in Southern California, and he took me under his wing, and I learned outside sales in the streets of LA. And that was a real eye-opener and a life skill that really served me the rest of my life. After kind of getting caught up in the LA hustle and bustle, I made some mistakes in my life that nearly cost me my marriage. My wife left me for a period of time. We nearly divorced. And it was the first major setback that I had. And I purposed in that to figure out who I needed to become to win her back. And thankfully I did. And then we set off in many, many years of marriage and had kids. And when I was about 40 years old, I had gotten to that point in life where I was tired of the corporate grind and decided that I saw a lot of opportunity in financial services. I had a mission that I felt I wanted to do. If I could make the world better in one way, I wanted to do it through financial education. And I decided my entree into that would be the mortgage business based on what was going on macroeconomically. And people who follow me know that I'm kind of a macroeconomic nerd, but I try to figure out where the flow of money is going to be and put myself in a position to benefit from that. And so from 2000 to 2008, I took a fun ride in the mortgage business, made gobs of money, owned millions of dollars of real estate. That's where Robert and I, I got involved in the Real Estate Guys radio show. We were doing the seminars together. We started a real estate development company that exists to this day. We wrote a book. We had a TV show. I mean, it was like he and I had the Midas touch. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, then in 2008, it all fell apart. But an interesting thing happened to me, kind of turning the time clock a little bit back. In 1987, when I was 27 years old, I was in the securities business. So I took a little time out from corporate America and made my first entree into entrepreneurism. I'd already started and sold a business. I had already bought and sold a piece of property and made profit. So I understood equity. I was entrepreneurial. So I wasn't quite a full-blown B and an I, to use the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow quadrant vernacular, but I was definitely oriented that way and learning. And so 1987, my dad took a company, a high-tech company he started public. He took it public in June of 1987. And he, became an overnight eight-figure millionaire. And so he was in his lockout period where you can't sell your insider stock. When October 19th, 1987 hit, stock market crashed. Unfortunately, he was margined on some of that stock. It dropped all the way over 90%. He took the margin call, couldn't raise the cash, got taken out. Not only did he lose his fortune, he got handed a huge capital gain, because even at the takeout price, based on his founder's rate, it created a huge phantom gain. He had no money, but he had a big tax liability. And that cost him his home. Really, it cost him his career because he lost his confidence. And I love my dad and I have gobs of respect for my dad, but my dad at that time, his self-worth was wrapped up in his net worth.
Sure.
And I looked at that and I made a vow to myself. I said, if that ever happens to me, and I hope it doesn't, but if it ever does, I swear that I will not lose my mojo. I will not think that because I lost everything that I'm a permanent failure. It's just something that happened and I can rebuild. Well, little did I know, at about the same age as when he lost everything in 87. I lost everything in 2008. And so that was a big, big hit. And so then to fast forward, kind of rebuilt, got back on the horse. And just this last December, that pretty little blonde that I married way back in 1978 died in my arms after 41 years of marriage and 43 years together. And then that was the hardest hit of my life. And so I'm just now about 7 weeks removed from that experience. And I've had to figure out how to really rebuild my life without my wife. And I've never lived alone as an adult or as a child in my entire life. And I'm figuring that out too. So that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And, big picture, a lot of lessons in there that I'm happy to share.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I thought would be a really useful topic for us, because, you are, I think, sort of like me in that you're a problem solver, right? And I think the thing that makes people like you and me most uncomfortable are things that you can't solve. And before the show, you were telling me a little bit about some of the some of the strategies that you initially tried and didn't seem to work very well for your most recent loss, and then ultimately sort of how that led into more of a process that I think that might be useful for not only these kind of personal tragic losses, but all kinds of setbacks. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I think, from a practical standpoint, every single person listening at one point or another has or will suffer a tragic loss. We lose love, we lose money, deals go bad, we have health issues. There's just, 1,000 things in life that happen to us. And what I've learned in my nearly 60 years on the planet is that the people who have success aren't the ones that avoid loss because it's common to all, but it's how they respond. How quickly do they pick themselves back up when they've been knocked down? How quickly do they get back in the game? And, the first time, it took me a long time, took me a few months to really kind of figure out who I was and that I loved my wife and I wanted to try to win her back. And then I realized a particular area that I needed to work on, and that was my discipline. I was undisciplined. I couldn't control my urges. I couldn't control my impulses. I couldn't control my temper. I wasn't abusive or anything like that, but I was a typical young guy that just wasn't in control of myself at the level that a mature man would need to be if he wants to really have a responsible life. When I lost everything in 2008, I was in the dumps for about 90 days. So I didn't have any money. I was just feeling sorry for myself. And even though I'd seen my dad's experience and had vowed not to let that happen to me, it's one thing to say, oh, I don't want to let that happen to me, but it's another thing to know what to do. And so it took me a while to kind of figure that out. This last time I drew upon those previous two experiences, and I'd never taken an emotional hit like this. So I really didn't know what to do. And so I did what I always do when I don't know what to do, and it's not YouTube.
Right.
But I read a book. So a friend of mine sent me a book about how to survive the loss of love that she had found helpful when she lost her father. And I read that book and I got a couple of pieces of the puzzle. And part of that puzzle was, you're going to feel this in your body. You need to be kind to yourself, give yourself time to heal. This is just the same as having a really bad physical injury. So it was it's okay that you're hurting. It's not unusual. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. You're just going to have to go through a process of healing. And so I took a week off and I was meditating on that, and I was journaling, and I was doing a lot of crying and thinking and just all the things that you do. And I realized at the end of the week, not only wasn't better, I was worse. And I thought, well, I can't keep going like this. Then my daughter gave me a book called It's Okay That You're Not Okay by Megan Devine.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even read the whole book. Sometimes I don't read a whole book. I get to the point where I get the aha moment, like, okay, I got the piece that I needed. And what I picked up from that, and I don't know if this was her words or if it was something that she said that stimulated this in my own mind, but it came out in a journaling session, which was one of the very first things I did. I started getting up every day and journaling just to process what was going on. And that's a habit that I've had anyway, but I mean, I really turned it up a notch doing this. And what she said, or what I came up with is, when you stub your toe, it's an injury and it hurts. It turns black and blue. It hurts like hell. You feel like, your toe is never going to heal, or maybe that it got cut off, but it's not really that bad, and it'll heal. And then you'll be back to normal. And then you can have an injury where your foot gets ripped off in an industrial accident and it hurts like hell, except eventually the pain heals, but you're never the same.
Yeah.
You're basically, disfigured or mutilated. And that's what this kind of a loss is. I'm never going to forget my wife. I'm never going to stop missing her. I don't want to run from the memories or try to erase that. And I don't want to just bury the emotions and be with busyness, because I could do that too. So I'm allowing myself to feel what I'm feeling, but I'm also realizing that it isn't about healing. It's about adapting and understanding that fundamental difference. Just like my balance sheet after 2008, my business, my income wasn't going to heal itself. It was never going to grow back on its own. It was only going to happen if I took action, and I had to adapt. I didn't have the same things to work with. I didn't have credit. I didn't have capital. To a degree, my reputation had been tarnished. A lot of the infrastructure that I had was no longer there. So it was a whole new ballgame. And the same thing was true here in this incident in 2008, with the loss of my wife last December.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of other things I've heard. Actually. I think actually yesterday, I remember, I was watching something where Anderson Cooper was talking to somebody about the Kobe Bryant. It was the husband who had lost his wife in there, and said that Gloria Vanderbilt had told him after his father's loss and after his brother's loss the same thing, which was that that grieving doesn't have a timeline, right? It's ultimately a it's just something that is there, and it will continue to be there. You just kind of not move on, but you continue with your life. Like Ben Hardy says, change is inevitable. The question is, is there growth? So you made sort of I think a decision from what you're telling me, that you're going to try to figure out, okay, well, what is the path forward then? And then I think you actually sort of felt like there was a systematic way of doing that. Is that right?
Yeah. Buck, me, one of my skill sets, I'm not very good at very many things, but I'm pretty good at a couple things. And one of them is strategy. Mm-hmm. Pretty good at trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And it's about what needs to be done in the scope and sequence, kind of a step-by-step. How do I take what I have and work with it to get what I need to get where I want to go? And, you do that in investing, you do that in business. And I just said, well, I need to apply that same methodology. I need to define a process that I can follow to get from where I am to where I want to go. And I didn't know how to do that from a healing perspective, but I clearly knew how to do that from an adapting perspective. So the first thing that I did was I just, as I mentioned, carved out some quiet time to just begin to journal. And in the process of journaling, I asked myself questions. And I always say that if you want great answers, you got to ask great questions. Mm-hmm. So I was asking my question, what is the way forward? And what came to me was the first thing I needed to do was I needed to cultivate positive energy in my life. I was experiencing a tremendous amount of negative energy, sadness, sorrow, loss, grieving, and there was no escape from it. I mean, reminders of her were everywhere. And like I said, I didn't want to forget. So I was going to have to bring a counterbalance of positive energy into my life, and I was going to have to cultivate that. And so then the next question is, well, how do you do that?
Right.
I said, well, the first thing I got to do is I got to cultivate positive energy in my body. I need to take better care of my body. I'd spent the last several months sleeping in hospitals, eating whatever was available, not really working out. I was deprived of sleep, deprived of nutrition, deprived of exercise. And so physically, I was already drained. Then I added this emotional drain. So the first thing I did was I stopped drinking, just completely. I just said, I'm going to admit to myself that I'm a potentially weak human being. I'm in sorrow. And I don't want to be that guy that is crying himself to sleep at night, watching mindless TV, sucking down a bottle of Jack Daniels to alleviate my pain. So I'm just going to announce to the world and myself and make a commitment. I'm just not drinking at all, not socially, not privately. I'm just not going to do it. That was number one. Number two is I was going to put good things in my mind, not negative things. So I said, I'm not going to watch TV. I get all the news I need from my news feeds. Most of the time I'm just watching talking heads, expound relentlessly about trivial things going on in the world that really don't impact me, but they're all negative. I said, I don't need it right now. I don't have the emotional strength to handle it. They're going to put good ideas in my head, good things in and on my body. I set up appointments with doctors and naturopaths, chiropractors and physical therapists. And I went and got blood tests done and started getting supplementation. I didn't try to be a do-it-yourselfer. I went and got professional help to just improve my body chemistry. How can I do that? So number one was just creating positive energy. And the other thing was just surrounding myself with the right people. And I've already done, I think, a pretty good job. I have a great network, a very supportive tribe. And so rather than avoid engaging with people, within a few weeks, I was out at our annual goals retreat. It was great. I was around a bunch of positive people. Last week, I went and spoke at a conference for some investors, sat on a panel on macroeconomics. That was great. And so I continue to engage in my life, but I really am working on emphasizing time with positive people. So I could go on and on, but the idea is, whatever it is for you, step number one is cultivate positive energy. And then that's a goal, but it isn't really a strategy. So I had to come up with a strategy and a set of tactics underneath the goal. How do I actually do that? And for me, those are some of the things I chose to do. So that was step one.
And then,
step two, I can go on to.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So step two was to establish productive structure. And it was based on this premise that there is no motion without emotion. I'm a big believer that emotion is what motivates you. It's what propels you. And a lot of people go to seminars, or they read self-help books, or they get inspired or motivated, but it's short-lived because they get this burst of energy, but it isn't focused in a structure. So I liken it to an explosion. Right. If you have an explosion, there's a big release of energy, and maybe it destroys a few things or warms the room for a little while. But without any real structure, it just comes and goes. If you compare that to, say, a gun or a rifle or a cannon or something, you have an explosion, but because there's structure to funnel that energy in a specific direction, you can aim it at a target and hit the target. And so I said, well, I've just been given the gift of extreme emotional energy. Either it's going to roll me over, or I'm going to channel that through some productive structure. And so I decided that that's what I was going to do. And I also knew it was going to be so much energy that I was going to need to reserve time in my schedule to actually vent some of it. So I got Kleenex all over the house. I allow myself to look at my wife's picture. And if I feel like crying, I do. And I don't try to man up. I just vent it a little bit. But I also have a lot of things driving me. And so the structure is, first of all, time. It was the very first thing I did. I got out and I blueprinted my schedule for 13 weeks. I figured out everything I needed to do, like a budget. I said, okay, here's the total amount of time I have to work with. Here's all the things that I want to do by order of priority. Step number one, I need to take care of my body. So I joined a fitness center, hired a personal coach, and I blueprinted all my appointments. I got the doctor, blueprinted that, physical therapist, all that, chiropractor, all of that, workout times, all of that. So I set that time aside first. Then I figured out when I was going to sleep, when I was going to eat, and then what was left over is when I was going to work. And then inside of that, I blueprinted all of that so that the team would know what to expect, because everybody was leaving me alone because they're sweet and they're concerned for me, and I get it. But at the same time, I need to be around positive people. I need to be feeling like I'm making progress in my work. So it's important for them to feel like, hey, you can engage me, and here's the time slots where you can do that. You're not bothering me. I've allocated the time for you. So getting really complete control of my time. Second one was my space, organizing my office, organizing my computer, or just organizing the house to my liking now because I'm in it alone, just kind of getting my space organized. And I'm still in the process of doing that. And then there's more, accounting structure, financial structure, entity structure, because a lot of things change, when you lose your spouse. So I'm just getting all of that together. So create productive structure, routines, habits. Because, there's an old saying that says, in the beginning, we make our habits, and then eventually our habits make us. And when you're in a life transition like this, the temptation is, or the probability is, if you don't manage it proactively, then you're going to emotionally, at a subconscious level, default to things that are bad habits, like eating the wrong food, watching the wrong shows, drinking too much, hanging out with the wrong people, just a lot of things that, you can naturally fall into. So step 2 is establishing, productive structure.
Mm-hmm. So now you've got, and so far that makes a lot of sense, because you're saying first one was positive energy. You got to, turn all this energy into positive energy, introduce positive energy, and then you have to actually harness that energy. And that's where number 2 comes in. What's the third step?
So the third step is setting clear goals, strategies, objectives, and tactics. In other words, having a target to aim at. So I had to redefine who I was. So I created a document I call my, I thought maybe I had it here on my desk. I read it every day, but it's my MVV Go, mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives. And I read it every day. So I get up in the morning, I journal for 45 minutes minimum. And then for the last 15 minutes, I read this document and I continually refine it. The first thing I read is my personal vision. My vision for my life. And it's really, who am I? So I call them my I am statements. And I just made a set, and a couple of them that I put in there, I put in that were relevant. And I'm not suggesting these should be other people's, but these are mine, just by way of example. One of them I put down is that I love myself in practical ways so I can love others in practical ways. Because I have children, I have grandchildren, I have teammates, I have partners, I have people that are counting on me to bring my A game every day. But in order to do that, I need to take care of myself so that I can take care of them. It's one thing to love them in your heart, but to have the energy to love them in practical ways, you got to take care of yourself. Another one that I have is, I am a thriving survivor. Because I do think you have to paint a picture of who you are and then be who you're becoming. And so I have this vision, and it's a long list about my character qualities and just who I am and what I do and what I stand for. And then I have my values. I have both my personal values, and I'll just tell them, it's simple. It's a little acronym, ACTS. It's authenticity. I try to be an authentic person. Contribution. I'm not here to take, I'm here to give. I believe in the law of reciprocity. Tenacity. I don't want to give in or give up easily. I fight, I compete. And then the last one is stewardship. I recognize that life is a gift. All the things that I have are a gift. My responsibility is to steward those gifts. Most of them I will not take with me when they end. When I buried my wife, she didn't take anything with her. And I saw that and I thought, I'm just a steward of all these things. Most of these things are going to end up in somebody else's possession if I'm a good steward and hold on to them until I'm no longer here. So that little acronym is really my set of values. And then in our business, we have a set of values. I have a personal mission statement, an internal mission statement, which is what I want my life and my actions to do for me. But I have my external mission statement is, why am I here on earth? What am I here to do? My personal mission statement from an external perspective is to empower individual freedom through financial education for effective action. I've been about that for going on, 20, 25 years now. And it just drives what I do. And then I have a strategy underneath how to do that. But the point is, you got to have a clear vision of who you are, a clear set of values that you operate by, a clear mission statement of what it is you're really trying to accomplish, both personally, internally, and externally. And of course, those translate in my case, because I'm an entrepreneur, into my business and my investing. And I communicate some of these things to our team because their job is to help make those things become a reality. And I focus on these things on a daily basis. Now I've got positive energy. I've got structure in my time, getting up every morning, journaling, reading these things, and then all of the time management structure, team structure, productivity structure to actually act out on prosecuting these mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives. And I think that's really important to do. That's why we do our Create Your Future event every year, is to help people go through a disciplined process of figuring out what those goals are. You can't hit a target that you haven't identified, and all the structure and energy in the world won't work if you don't have a target to aim at.
Yeah.
So that's number 3.
Yeah, that's a big one too. Can't be a jumbo jet traveling 500 miles per hour and not having a destination. You're gonna run out of gas eventually and crash. So, what's the final step?
It's easy. Act relentlessly. Act relentlessly, because you have to act. Thinking about it, talking about it, dreaming about it, hoping for it. None of that gets it done. You've got to act, and you've got to act relentlessly. I look at life, and have always looked at life this way, and you know me, Buck, because you've seen me. I believe you always have to keep your shoulder to the boulder. If you don't keep your shoulder to the boulder, there's a slight uphill. Sometimes it's even steep. But if you take your shoulder off that boulder, it's going to roll you backwards. So there's no status quo. You're either advancing or you're regressing. That's it. And so once you've kind of got the positive energy going, you've got your structure in place, you've got goals that you're excited about, and values that you operate by, now you just got to go out there and execute. Jim Collins talks about the execution, the relentless execution of the boring basics. It's easy to reinvent and refine and revisit and talk about all these different things. But if you can just focus on the fundamentals, Vince Lombardi, after he wins a football championship, spring training, shows up. He's got the greatest football team on earth standing before him. And he looks at him, he holds up a football. He says, guys, gentlemen, this is a football. And the game we play is about running, throwing, catching, blocking, tackling, kicking. We're going to get great at those things. We're going to do them at such a high level that we win. Not knowing how to do 80 million things. It's just the relentless execution of the boring basics.
Yeah. How do you, as an entrepreneur, sometimes that's difficult to do, right? Because we have a tendency to, at least I do as an entrepreneur, to, try to catch myself from chasing shiny objects, right?
Right.
But I guess the first part is admitting you've got a problem. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, in terms of,
do you want the answer to that?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you asked the question, so I'll keep it short. I definitely have that, feature creep, mission creep, idea creep, whatever you want to call it. But, you're always innovating. As an entrepreneur, as a visionary, that's your job, and you have to do that. What you have to have is at your right-hand side, you have to have somebody who is an implementer of your vision. And they have only so much capacity. So it's structure, and that's your team structure. So it's a structure of identifying not every opportunity you could pursue, but what are your most important opportunities. And then usually those opportunities dovetail into each other, at least mine do. So I have business A, and then I can do business B and business C and business D, but they all kind of dovetail into business A. And so, when I have my meetings with the team, it's a reality check. It's like, okay, what do we have the capacity to do? One of the disciplines we have in our organization is that when you're 80% full, you're full. The other 20% of your time needs to be dedicated to personal improvement, personal development, process improvement, making the operation more efficient, training so that you can bring new people in as you grow to take your place so you can move up to the next level, and cross-training so that we have redundancy on all vital functions. So the answer really is discipline. Entrepreneurs don't like to hear that, but it doesn't mean you have to stop dreaming. You keep dreaming and keep filling that idea bucket up. What you're doing, though, is just disciplining yourself not to try to do everything at once. You pick them off a little at a time based on what your team is telling you they can actually help you implement.
That is great advice, my friend. And again, I do want to thank you for taking the time out today to be on Wealth Formula Podcast, and hope you can come back, in the near future and get some updates on how you're doing and all the productivity that you've been able to muster out of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I would trade it all back in a moment to have my wife back, but since that's not an option, there is no point in crying over spilled milk, if you will, or, the past is cast. So I have a new set of reality. If I would have been in an automobile accident and lost my legs, then I would have to learn to live life without legs. I'm having to live life without my wife. And that's just a reality. So I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I'm making the best of it. I know that she would want me to go on and have the best life that I could have. And I feel like for all the people that love me, that support me, my kids, my grandkids, my partner, my partners, my friends, I owe it, and especially for the mission, just to pick myself off the mat and keep going. So I am, and this is how I'm doing it. And if that helps even one person out there recover from a setback, get back in the game, and get busy about their life's work, then I'm happy to have taken the time to share it. So thank you for giving me the platform, Buck. Congratulations again on your great work. Keep it up. And next time you schedule an event you want me at, just give me a little bit more advance notice, and it would be my absolute pleasure to join you.
Thanks, Russ. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. For you video watchers out on YouTube, I have to apologize for the technical difficulties we had there at the end. Something happened with my internet, and anyway, my whole street lost internet for like an hour or two or something like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that show. I know it's a different topic than we typically talk about. Right? We don't really talk about not things that are not about money necessarily. But listen, these kinds of things, these tragedies are inevitable in people's lives and inevitable aspects of something that everybody has to confront at one point or another, and that all adults can relate to at some level or another. And to the extent that this is a platform where that's useful, I've always kind of viewed this show is not just about a wealth creation in the financial sense, but I've always tried to also create some layers of this idea of holistic wealth. Happiness is really what that's all about, and well-being. That's all it's all apart. It's funny because we had Hal Elrod on the show recently, and Hal Elrod was one of those guys, who was really talking about who's one of those self-help guys. So it's not just about money; it's about all these other things. And it just occurred to me that Hal Elrod was talking about Kobe Bryant as an example of somebody who does all these amazing things. And how ironic, that's like only 2 weeks ago, and the next thing you know, Kobe Bryant dies in an accident. But anyway, so this idea of happiness and well-being for me are a big part of wealth, and it's something that I'm actually taking a special interest in this year. And in fact, at our next meetup, I'm going to do a talk for you that has very little to do with personal finance. Myself, I'm going to do a talk about happiness, because what I'm going to try to do, what I've made my mission to do this year, is to put my old medical student intensity in academics to get to the bottom of this thing that we call happiness, at an academic level, right? At a level that is not just waving hands and stuff like that, but with real data, because I'm very curious about this. And I think most of the stuff out there is pretty soft. So anyway, I'm doing my research as we speak, and we'll hope to give you an update on my findings at the event, along with obviously a bunch of tremendous other speakers like Kenny McElroy and Tom Wheelwright et al. So, of course, there will be plenty of options to also meet and spend time with others in the group and to build that community. So I highly recommend that you come. Again, the site to go to sign up is wealthformulaevents.com. That is it for me this week on Wealth Formula Podcast. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.